Will Barou be the final rival to Isagi? Will Kira make his comeback in the U20 World Cup? Will Chigiri tear his ACL again? Those are just some of the questions I will be answering today, as I around a month ago asked you guys for your craziest and most spicy theories surrounding Blue Lock. I will say what I personally think of the theories, and if I think that there's a chance of them happening. Also, if you don't agree with my take, please don't go too wild on me. Anyway, with that boring intro out of the way, let's get into the first one, which is really crazy. And it goes as follows. Chigiri is definitely tearing his ACL again for Kunigami's development, sometime in the U20 World Cup. Now firstly, I don't think that Chigiri tearing his ACL will happen because of Kunigami, but instead because it has been almost built up for that to happen. Now as the #1 Chigiri defender, I feel awful about this, but there's no way that it can't happen. I first hoped that Yukimiya would take the fall and lose his eyesight, which might have spared Chigiri. But with one of the clubs that bid on Yukimiya offering to pay for his eye treatment, that's not the case anymore, which is going to sound harsh, but it sucks. But no, Chigiri is definitely tearing his ACL sometime. I'm not sure if it will be in this U20 World Cup or if it will be saved for the real World Cup, but one thing I know for sure is that I will be devastated when it happens. The one after that kind of aligns with the Chigiri one, so I thought why not take it as well. It says that Yukimiya will lose his vision before the Japan wins the U20 World Cup. Now I feel like this is super unlikely to happen, as Ego told him that there was a club that was willing to pay for his eye surgery. Now when Ego told Yukimiya this, he firstly declined the offer, as he felt that he didn't earn it as it was after the Munchen City match, where he scored thanks to Isagi. However, in the Ubers game and the PXG game, he didn't do anything insane. So even though he was talking big after the Munchen City game, I still feel like he will take the offer. The only thing which could cause some sort of trouble would be if the club has taken back their offer, but firstly, I'm not sure if they are able to, and on top of that, I don't feel like they would, because that would make the whole conversation he had with Ego pretty much pointless, even though it already kinda is. Moving on, the next says that they have to show the meaning of the new Gen 11. Maybe they can resign from that group, or show that Kaiser and Don Lorenzo are holding back like 40%. Now I firstly want to tackle the resigning aspect. If I have understood the new Gen 11 correctly, then they themselves haven't crowned themselves with that title. And the title has been given to them by most likely the media and the fans who crowned 11 players as the new best thing, and if that's the case, I feel like it will be hard for them to resign. Now the theory that they have been holding back and only used 40% is something that would suck, but I would be down for that as it would be so dope. However, I doubt that Kaiser would have raged so much if he was holding back, and even though his mother is an actress, I don't think he's gotten her acting genes. Kaiser's crash out is up there with some of the best in Blue Lock, and there's no way he would have reacted like that if he knew that he wasn't going all out. However, speaking of the new Gen 11, I want to preface that we don't know how strong the others are, and it might be that Kaiser and Lorenzo were some of the weaker of the new Gen 11, and the others might be stronger, but that's something we will just have to wait and see. Moving on to one that I have seen a lot of variations of, this one says that Kira will enter and maybe have a match after the Neo-Egoist League, and Ego still has him because he was also chosen by Ego himself. Now the first thing I want to tackle is the part with Kira being chosen by Ego himself. Now I went back and reread the first few chapters, and I couldn't find any indication that Ego chose Kira, and I'm pretty sure that it was Henri that scouted him, but if I'm wrong, then I apologize. Now I don't see Ego having kept Kira or letting him do some sort of match after the Neo-Egoist League. However, the only way I can see Kira coming back to the story is if it's revealed that he has a double citizenship and that he is from both Japan but also some other country. Now why would this matter? Well, Kira has been banned from participating in the Japan U20 team thanks to Ego, and the only way for him to play in the U20 World Cup would be for another country. Let's take Argentina for example now. If he has a double citizen from Argentina, then it will make him able to play with the Argentinian U20 team, and that way he would be able to face off against Blue Lock in the U20 World Cup arc. Now I would love for this to happen, as even though Kira was such a minor character, his philosophy was so different from Ego's, and seeing their philosophies clashing once again would be so cool. And I also want Kira to have gotten a bigger ego, not necessarily the ones that the Blue Lock players have, because that would destroy the purpose of him, but I want his ideals to clash with Isagi's. However, I don't see their matchup being in the final for example, but more like in the early stages of the U20 World Cup and max in the semi-final. For the next theory, I will only focus on the first part. It goes as follows. We will have the 23 selected for the U20 World Cup, but will take 30 players to the camp for extra training. He will say it's because he doesn't want their careers to go extinct so early, so he will give a second chance for glory. Now firstly, we have seen that Ego has a kind heart, as we saw in the U20 match where Shido had just scored, and Isagi rushed to Ego to ask for advice. But Ego then told Isagi that Blue Lock hadn't lost, as every one of them was to go and get offers from famous universities and national clubs. So he's somewhat kind, but at the same time, I don't think he cares about everyone. And if some players were to have to go extinct, then I don't think he would mind, as we can't forget that he has ruined the dreams of like 250 players in Blue Lock. And also, if that were the case, and Ego would pick 30 players instead of the initial 23, then I would be so mad. The reason why the Neo-Egoist League has been so insane and so exciting to watch is just because of the stakes it holds. If you aren't in the top 23 players, then it's goodbye to you, which is why they all had to work their very best to stay in. And if suddenly a ton of players get to stay, then firstly the stakes would have been for nothing. And then it would feel so bad for the top 23 players who had to work their way into the top 23 while the others failed and still got in. In the next theory, which I really like, it says that we will see unlikely players also scoring in the U20 World Cup, not just the strikers. Seeing goals being scored by Karasu, Nico, Aiku, and even Raichi. Now, as I said, this is a theory that I really enjoy. I would love for the more side characters to get their chance to shine, and not only the strikers like it has been right now. Seeing an unexpected Karasu or Aiku goal in the U20 World Cup will firstly mean so much more, as we don't get to see it often, but the impact and the unusual aspect of it will make it so dope. Now of course, I will never ever say no to, for example, more Isagi or Rin goals, but I feel like there's a perfect opportunity to mix it a bit more in the U20 World Cup. Even though in the U20 match against Japan it was only the strikers who scored, that was still more exciting than the Neo-Egoist League because at that time we had no idea who would score. But now recently in the Neo-Egoist League, even though the goals have been wild, they have felt a bit boring, as we knew that it would be Isagi and Kaiser who would score the goals. Now this is only because the arc was mainly focused on them, and also with the limit of 3 goals, it's hard to make more characters score. However, I hope that the U20 World Cup matches become more like the match against Japan, and also with a mix of other characters. Especially I would love to see a header from either Aiku or Ryu, as both of them are pretty tall. Headers are something we haven't seen that much of in the manga, which I believe is a shame because I feel like the author can make some really cool things with them. But anyway, I've been rambling a bit too much on this one question, but it was really fun talking about. Moving on, the next one says that Barou will be the main rival to challenge Isagi for the #1 striker position. Now I really like this, as I feel like Barou is the most true striker we have in Blue Lock. You could make an argument for Shido, but I still believe that in terms of being a true striker, I feel like Barou tackles the ideals to the best. However, with that said, I do feel like the last showdown will undoubtedly be between Rin and Isagi. Ever since the second selection, their rivalry has been built up, and even though, for example, Nagi and Barou's goals have been to crush Isagi, Isagi himself has most of the time only been focused on crushing Rin and wanting to do everything to show the world that he is better than Rin. And since the Japan match, Rin has had the same exact feelings, but towards Isagi. So even though I feel like Barou would be a better fit for the role, I feel like all the roads lead back to Rin in the end. However, with that said, I will say that if Barou is the last stepping stone for Isagi to beat to become the #1 striker, then I would be all aboard on it. And if something happens to Rin, for example, if he loses his will to play football after beating Sei, then I feel like Barou is the next best candidate. So even though I still believe that it will be Rin, I can definitely see the argument being made for Barou. The next theory goes as follows. Japan will get kicked out of the U20 World Cup in the knockout stages, or they'll lose in the finals. Now it all comes down to how long they want to run this manga for, but I've always believed that Japan will lose either in the semi-finals or the finals in the U20 World Cup, but then train and go on to win the true World Cup tournament. However, including 2 World Cups in this manga, with it already being 300 chapters, might be a bit tough, as each game is so insanely long. However, I can see this manga going to like chapter 600 as long as the mangaka wants to push it. But yeah, I think that Japan losing in the finals in the U20 World Cup is an awesome and very likely theory. On a quick side note, I feel like it will be France who will beat them in the final, as Loki will probably be in the U20 World Cup since he is the same age as the Blue Lockers, not to mention how Charles has evolved thanks to the Neo-Egoist League. But I always love talking and speculating about the World Cups, so please let me know what you think down in the comments. Moving on, we have a theory that says that as we go into the future arcs, we are going to see aspects or abilities like Metavision more. They are not going to be so different, but really similar. Now this is really interesting, because I feel like this will happen without a doubt. I remember when Karasu got his metavision, and a lot of people were angry about it, as it felt like everyone was getting metavision, which made it less special. However, in the future of the story, I feel like every logical and analytical person will get metavision, and every pure striker and attacker will get predator eyes, for example. These powers aren't something which are meant to be special. They have felt special, because the skill level of the Blue Lock players has been so low until now, but now that they are improving and going up against really good players, they will firstly improve and awaken those eyes for themselves, but also realize that everyone has them. I don't feel like it's an outrageous take to say that when we get to the U20 World Cup arc, almost all of the players will have some sort of special eyes because it's a sign that they have reached that level. I don't think that metavision ever was an ability which was exclusive for Isagi, but it's rather that he got to that level first and learned that technique and way to use his eyes, which means that in the U20 World Cup, I believe that he will discover that everyone has the same thing that he has, and that he has to adapt and either awaken his metavision or come up with another technique or ability. Moving on to the last one, I want to talk about this one, which says that Blue Lock deserves a better studio, probably Mappa. The insane art style and panels cannot be given justice by 8-bit. They are influenced by money grabbers to rush the anime. Now there's a lot I want to talk about here. Firstly, I don't think saying that Mappa should have had this is the best example, as we know how brutal their work schedules and work environment have been. Now I get wanting another studio for it, and that there might be studios that would have been able to handle Blue Lock a lot better, but from my personal point of view, I feel like the Season 2 we got from 8-bit was totally fine, and I would even say good. In my opinion, there were clear improvements from the first season, which shows off growth. Now, I will never try to argue with someone who wants another studio, because I see their point. We both love Blue Lock and want the best for it. And would it be better if some larger and more staffed studio made Blue Lock? Well, maybe. But there are lots of big manga that don't get anime adaptations, and I'm sure glad that Blue Lock has been blessed with not only one season but two, and if 8-bit continues working on the third one, then I will be satisfied. One thing that I will say though is that I really don't like when people speak super negatively against the anime and the animation, because at the end of the day, we have to realize that there have been people who have worked hard on this anime, and tried their absolute hardest to make it as good as possible. So when people go and trash it, it feels wrong, even though the animators themselves might not see the harsh comments and messages. I still just don't feel like it's the right thing to do, but that might just be me, and I might be the odd one for thinking like that. Also, before ending it, I just wanted to give a special segment to this guy, who actually predicted that Rin and Isagi would end the Neo-Egoist League with the same value, which was something which I really didn't even have in mind, because in my mind it felt so lackluster, but I really like how it was executed in the end, as it sets up their rivalry even better with them being considered equal now that they go into the next arc, because if Rin got the highest value, then it would feel so boring as he already had the highest value before the game. It would work if Isagi got the highest, as he would have achieved what he wanted and would have beaten Rin. However, with that said, having them at the same place, even though how cliche it is, I feel like it's for the best. Anyway, if you like Blue Lock and videos like this, then I would highly suggest you subscribe to this channel, and while you are at it, leave a comment and a like, as it helps out with the algorithm a ton. And if you are curious to see another video of mine, then please watch the video that will be popping up on the screen now. Anyway, thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye.